The White House creates a media bias offenders page. Let's discuss how much we love it. It's the NewsBusters podcast. I'm Tim Graham here with Associate Editor Nick Night Train Fondacaro and our video editor guru, Bill D'Agostino. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us.
You had a decent Thanksgiving weekend?
Yes. I had a little bit of breaking news on my end that we'll get to, but yeah, nice and relaxing, reset my meters for work and dealing with the View on a daily basis.
Yeah, everybody needs a little R&R from some, especially you from that. Are they back this week?
Yeah, I believe they should be back this week. They actually did 3 days live last week, so even while I was on vacation, I had to still watch them and just put out some videos for you guys.
Yeah. How about you, Bill? Do you have a decent weekend?
Yeah, it was pretty solid. Good little family time.
I would merely state, before we get to all the media bias issues, that decorating weekend is what it becomes. And it's like, until the decorating is done, you can't have a holiday.
I came home to all the decorating.
Yeah.
The whole apartment was decorated when I got home. I was very happy.
Like, okay.
Because it looked nice and I didn't have to do any of it.
So the Trump White House thrilled the masses by putting up a media bias page on the White House website. Now, I think the funniest part about this is if a Democrat wins in 2028 and they scrub this page, we can all say, "How dare you erase history?"
Yeah,
exactly.
But it's a fun page, and it's calling out media bias as they see it. Mm-hmm. Obviously, they did a ABC email the other day that had 9 links to NewsBusters.
Out of 15. Pretty good.
So, yeah, we're obviously going to enjoy this. Did you see anybody who delighted you the most in hating it?
No one in particular is coming to my mind, but we all know that they're not going to want to talk about which places they cite, although we know certain CNN hosts will say certain things about us on the air.
I would like to say that
without mentioning us by name.
I'd like to
We're talking about Jake Tapper, by the way. We're not a baby like you are, Jake. We call out people.
Yep.
Yes. In fact, we have 2 teams in our MRC Fantasy Football League with Tapper. What was yours?
Jake Tapper Sleep Demons. That's an inside joke from myself to myself.
And then it was Curtis has Jake Tapper's DM Bandits.
Yes. Yep.
DM Bandits. That's good. That's good. He is a DM ninja, is what he is.
Yes.
He slides in and out. Like he comes in and he drops you a little message and he leaves like a ninja.
He emails me. He doesn't DM me. But I mean, you've had Brian Stelter team names. We always have the.
It's always CNN. For some reason, they're the easiest network to pick on.
Basically earlier this season, I started the season off with Brian Stelter's hairline. Yes, and honestly, once I switched the names, I started doing a lot better. I'm now 10-2, or should be 11-2 by the end of today.
Yeah. Ooh. Yeah. You're out and away. Sadly, you're the New England Patriots. My boy Ben is more the New York Jets at this season, and Curtis.
Curtis is the inverse.
Cut his mic, Ben.
Anyway, yes, I would like to see what Oliver Darcy has to say about this, but he stopped our subscription because we overshared it, apparently.
Yep.
So they canceled it. How about that? Oliver Darcy's business model.
What a baby.
Yeah, the Washington Post was like, we went to the Freedom of the Press Foundation to talk about how this is a terrible, terrible thing. And then it got funnier when Jim Acosta went on MS Now and on the Velshi show, but Velshi was off for the weekend, I guess, because apparently Ali Velshi loves Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Who knew?
I'm sure.
Or it was Al Jazeera reunion weekend. I don't know which one.
More likely.
But Jim Acosta went on and actually recommended something we found highly amusing, which was, he said, we should get all the White House press to stop showing up because Trump's too rude to the reporters.
And, to me, I think the only solution to all of this is collective action. We need to see the networks get together, perhaps with some of the major newspapers, send a letter to the White House, send it to Caroline Leavitt, and say, listen, if the president does not stop these attacks, we're not coming into your Oval Office sprays. We're not going to ride with you on Air Force One. You can have Fox and all of these other sycophantic outlets covering you, but we're just not going to do it. We're going to take a break for a while.
Sounds great.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it's easy for him.
Deny yourselves access. Perfect. Good. Yeah, cut yourselves out of the equation entirely. That's fantastic.
Exactly, and this is easy for him to say, considering that he no longer works for a major news outlet that has to cover and has the duty to cover it for their viewers. So it's easy for him to sort of make these claims because they're not going to do it, and he can just sit there on the sideline and tell them what to do with no expectations of needing to do it himself.
And with all of his grandstanding and obnoxious hijinks and trying to steal the spotlight when he was a White House reporter.
Exactly.
Can you imagine a Jim Acosta from, say, 2017 hearing that idea and going along with it and being like, yeah, no, I'll stay out of the briefing room. Like, are you kidding me?
Exactly. And I think another reason why he's trying to push this is also because he's not there anymore. So he has major FOMO of being not where the action is.
He has no skin in the game. Yeah. Now that he's not in there anymore, he's like, oh, it's a stupid game anyway. You guys shouldn't do that.
Trying to take his ball and go home.
Yeah.
Well, I think he just likes being provocative. I think he knew that he was going to get, the Mediaite article for saying something like this. But it's also just ridiculous in that he's basically saying Trump is so uncivil. He's so rude in the briefing room. And it was like, hello, what were you?
Right.
Now, we should point out, if people don't remember this, because you have to have a somewhat longer memory, that Jim Acosta, before he was extremely rude to Trump and screaming at him, I was thinking of Jim Acosta when Trump said to the reporter, "Quiet, piggy." It was that whole notion, and I think that they lost the context of it, which was somebody was hogging the mic.
Yeah,
and that is that when you get a question in, and then your question is answered, and he goes to the next one, and you keep yelling. That's what was going on. He was saying you're being rude, and he could have just said you're being rude,
But he wouldn't have. That's not how he talks. But I mean, Jim Acosta did plenty of that to Trump when he was president-elect. He would. I remember specifically him saying something along the lines of, "Mr. President-elect, that's not appropriate, sir."
Yeah.
Like, what are you a kindergarten teacher? Who are you? Shut up.
Well, and again, he's the king of inappropriate. I mean, this is the funny part. But we obviously at NewsBusters have him questioning Obama, and it was the opposite. Like, Mr. President, would you like to say something nice?
Right.
It's obviously this news media, as we always know, in Republican briefing rooms, they're a field of sharks. And then it's like with the Democrat presidents, it's all like, can we hand you a note card with our name and picture on it?
With the exception being Karine Jean-Pierre, because when you are so incapable of providing even basic information, even the friendly White House press corps gets angry at you and starts going, what is this? What are we doing here? Do you want to just give us the binder and leave?
And even with the friendly questions, you're just so unprepared for that you take that as, oh, they're being hostile to you when even they're trying to hold your hand.
Right, because when they say, would you like to say something nice? You go, oh, God, and you start
I'm not prepared for that. I don't have a page in my binder for that.
Right.
They're trying to hold your hand. You're pulling away like, I am strong and independent.
Yeah, no, pathetic. We were, when I was on with Lockwood around the time that that book was coming out, we talked about how it probably would have gone gangbusters if she'd released it in the form of a binder. I would have bought it. Because how cool would that be? Right? It's like that you associate that with her.
Mm-hmm. And there's so few pages in it. It could be like an efficient binder.
Yeah, how short is it?
I think it's like Curtis was telling us, it's under 200.
I think it's under 200 pages, which is short. I think the standard issue is maybe 240 to 270 is sort of the standard. The books we've done are in that range. Then there's people who write the 600-page doorstop. Mm-hmm. You just have to assume, does anybody really want to read that?
Right, which is the I'm not reading all that, but I'm happy for you, or I'm sorry that happened meme.
Yeah, I mean, Karine Jean-Pierre really defines the term DEI hire.
Oh yeah,
she does
because
and yet she is. Of all people, I guess, not and yet, maybe this is because, but she is the first to remind everybody of those immutable qualities that got her the job to begin with, right? Whose show was she on recently? Where I think it was with Ayman Mohyeldin, where he was on back when it was still MSNBC, back in the old times.
A couple weeks ago.
Yeah, forever ago. When he said something along the lines of, "Is there anything you regret about or that you think you were untruthful for?" Something like that. And her answer is, "Listen, I am a black woman and I am a lesbian." And it's like,
okay,
very good. Thank you.
Do you regret that?
Remarkable.
So let's turn to what was the breaking news of the weekend, sad news, and that was that a man just shot 2 National Guard members in D.C., not too far from the White House.
One fatally.
Yeah.
I don't know about the condition of the other one.
Well, and Curtis Houck jumped in and was blogging and tweeting what they were saying in the aftermath. And at that point, they suggested they would both died. To me, it reminded me of 1981, where they told us James Brady had been killed, and they were like, "Oops!" And breaking news is like that, But yeah, sadly, we lost Sarah Beckstrom, and then Andrew Wolf, I guess, is still recovering. They're pretty hopeful about him, but. Once again, with breaking news, it's like when Trump was shot, and like the first thing out of Margaret Brennan's mouth was, "Well, I don't see him toning down the rhetoric,"
Right.
It's like sometimes the breaking stuff is we had Ken Delanian.
Yeah, Ken Delanian saying almost essentially like, "Oh, like this should have been for ICE," essentially was like one of his points, is because ICE has all this controversy and anybody wearing a uniform kind of looks the same, and ICE doesn't wear identifying markers and stuff.
Is that who it was that said that?
Yeah.
Okay, I was,
so basically, it was essentially saying that like this should have been for ICE.
But of course, there's so much controversy happening in the United States right now with ICE, who are also wearing uniforms and wearing masks, and so you don't know people walking around with uniforms in an American city. There are some Americans that might object to that, and so apparently this shooting has happened.
I saw it. I was asked to react to that clip, and I couldn't see the speaker. It was just the audio, because they were doing like B-roll.
Right.
Yeah.
And the man took like 30 seconds to basically get out that sentence that you just said, because he was so nervous of like going too far and saying what he really thought, which was like, well, they deserve it and this is what they should expect if the president's going to be a fascist. That's basically what he was saying.
Exactly. This is sort of like the stuff that we were seeing during like after the Charlie Kirk assassination. Again, MS Now with sort of like this hot take of like, we're going to say the thing that the far left wants us to say, which is just that the right had it coming.
Yeah.
The thing that got Matthew Dowd fired as a contributor from MSNBC.
Yeah.
He was just trying too hard to please the audience.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and before that remark, something that got lost in all the noise was him saying maybe it was it was probably a Charlie Kirk supporter firing off his gun in jubilation. It
was
have you like met Republic? Are we a cartoon to you? Like, what's wrong with you?
I was going to say maybe that's the clip Jimmy Kimmel saw, but I think that what then there was Katie Tur, who was basically suggesting that these National Guard members aren't happy being deployed. Now, I believe they volunteered to come in on a Thanksgiving weekend,
right?
Which makes it sadder that they they were taking on something that they didn't have to take on,
right?
But what blew my mind was watching the PBS NewsHour on Friday, and basically Jonathan Capehart was nicer to the shooter than he was to Trump. Like, obviously, he went to Afghanistan. He came here from Afghanistan because he did good things or something. And I'm like, how can you be
disgusting,
more hostile to Trump than to the guy who shot these people?
Well, here's the thing that's really insane about all of this coverage is practically absent from all of it. I think virtually absent was any mention of the name Biden, right? Which there's plenty of blame for Trump. Some of them were blaming the members of the National Guard themselves for having the gall to wear a uniform in America, right? But Biden never comes up, right? And it's like, well, why is this guy here in the first place? Yeah. Why is this person who drove across country to murder 2 of our service members in this country? Oh, right, because Biden let him in.
Exactly. And I think that's going back to what you were pointing out, is that's what he wanted to point out, is that he's trying to defend the withdrawal, being like, oh, like they verified everybody that was coming in on the planes, when we know since that a lot of people got on the planes without any real verification. They were sitting there on the tarmac, and a lot of them got in like that first day when they were all like dangling and hanging off the plane.
Yeah.
And so like
the one guy sitting on the wheel and he gets like crushed in the wheel well. Yeah, that
falling.
was such a gruesome video.
So basically it's trying to defend the withdrawal, being like, oh, they were all verified, they were all vetted. It's like, no, they weren't, because clearly this guy was, I don't even know how he was able to get a gun at this point. I think they're probably still trying to investigate that. And you saw Democrats trying to talk about like semi-automatic, meanwhile it's a revolver.
How does anybody in the Pacific Northwest get a gun?
Exactly.
Right? I mean, like, not legally is the answer generally.
I thought they got them all from Alex Christie, but I'm just guessing.
We're not supposed to talk about that on the podcast.
So
sorry, Alex, you're going to get a visit from some agents later now.
But it's to me, I think the average viewer or voter doesn't like when this happens, and it's like, which president's to blame?
Probably the one that let the guy in.
Well, because I think they all want, so that Trump did that, and they all tried to say, no, your team allowed it. But apparently this guy had refused to show up for several check-ins.
Ah, there we go.
You know, so I mean,
why are we playing this game though? Why are we playing this stupid game where it's like we pretend to vet people, and then the people who we fail to vet, we're like, okay, yeah, just please come check in with us and tell us that you're not so we can prove you're not a bad guy. If I'm a bad guy, what am I thinking? I'm not thinking, oh, I better go to my check-in. Yeah, no, I'm thinking I better drive cross country and commit some heinous crime, right? Like they basically put the agency, the responsibility of proving that you're not dangerous in the hands of people that are potentially dangerous. And if they don't manage, if they don't show up and prove they're not dangerous, the administrator or the government just goes, oh, whoops, we can't find him. Sorry. Oh, well, I guess that one got away.
This is what we see with like the illegal immigration stuff, when they're like, oh, come back in a year or so to come to your court date, and they don't show up like ever.
And they just go, oops,
and they just disappear, and they're like, oh, we don't know where they are.
Well, you know, Nick, since we mentioned Afghanistan, we should mention that you have new developments in Zachary Young's series of lawsuits, his defamation lawsuits.
Yeah, so basically, Mr. Young has filed an appeal for getting the case thrown out against the Associated Press. So the big deal of wanting
he's appealing them throwing out the case.
Yeah, he's appealing them throwing out the case. So Judge Henry threw out the case back in August, and he going through the appeals process with the first DCA, which is the same appellate court that sided with Young when CNN tried to appeal the malice and punitive damages stuff in that case. And basically, so obviously Zach would want to appeal this, but one of the bigger takeaways from this appeal is that he also wants a new judge. Because basically what Judge Henry had said in his dismissal of the case, he equated the case to a sequel that should not have been made, called it a money grab, and sort of equated what the AP used in terms of their smuggling people accusation to just trying to smuggle candy, get candy into a movie theater without paying for the movie theater case. So Young is sort of concerned that the judge would have bias against him if the case was to proceed, and that he just basically did not like the merits of the case and just said,
well, yeah, what's the point of appealing a case like that if the judge, it's a bench trial, I assume, right? So
yeah.
It's not a jury trial.
Oh, no, it'll likely be a jury trial, because the last one was a jury trial.
Well, I mean, either way, if the judge has that much of a foregone conclusion that this case is nonsense.
Well, it sounds like the judge is saying, you already won once, CNN settled. You know, can't you just be happy with
Right. Leave the AP alone. You already got CNN. Come on. Don't be greedy.
Probably a little bit of that. And yeah, so especially because the CNN one took a few years to go through the whole process. And if you're now going to not only be going up against like the AP's lawyers, and you're going to be battling the judge the entire time and having to like maybe constantly appeal every decision if the judge is just going to start ruling against you for most of the stuff that went your way with the CNN case, it would just draw out the process even more. So they're just asking for a new judge entirely for that. Yeah.
All right. So since we're still talking about CNN a little bit, I wanted to turn to something Steve Malzberg was working on from Friday, and that was Katie Miller, the wife of Stephen Miller, was on Newsnight with Abby Phillip. Well, you kind of knew that was going to be a rollicking show. You know, the show was so rollicking that Scott Jennings wasn't the lead complainer.
firebrand.
Yeah. Well, so Katie Miller obviously came armed with this one, and that is that Abby Phillip went on this awful Jennifer Welch podcast where Jennifer Welch called her husband a Nazi Jew. And
Called Stephen Miller a Nazi Jew.
Yeah, so that when...
Not the first to say that, by the way.
Yeah, so that when Abby Phillip started talking about Nick Fuentes and how Nick Fuentes is this and that, and he's Nazis, and J.D. Vance and the Republicans have to cast Nick Fuentes out, and she kind of just...
Sorry, when was he ever in?
Exactly.
What are you talking about?
Well, but they have that impression that somehow he's... The MAGA base loves Nick Fuentes. That's one of their theories.
I'll push back a little against that and say they want to give that impression.
Yes.
I think that most of the smart ones know that that is not the case. But they want to scare people into believing that that's the case. That the Republican Party, that the American right writ large is basically the big Nick Fuentes movement.
Yeah,
When in fact, the majority of people probably in America and certainly on the right are like, who is that?
Exactly.
And those of us who do know, the vast majority of us are like, yeah, make that kid shut up already, Jesus.
Exactly, because they want to. This is them sort of gearing up for after Trump, and like they want to make Fuentes like the new Charlie Kirk. They want to make. Like,
oh yeah, they've explicitly tried to do that.
Exactly, and even the Charlie Kirk people were like, that's ridiculous.
Well, I was going to say because the people on Twitter were like, he campaigned against Trump in 2024.
Right, aggressively. And what is Nick going to be going on college tours now? Prove me wrong. The Holocaust didn't happen. Like,
and like. Kirk had kicked Fuentes out, had banned him from Turning Point events. Like there's like that whole thing where like they showed up at one outside in Florida and like they were just kept out of the hotel and just like kicked out. And
if I recall, The View was forced to issue an apology because they alleged that Charlie Kirk let them in when in fact he like explicitly banned them from the premises.
Yeah, and they basically said like, oh, you invited them in, and then claimed like, oh, they felt comfortable going there even after they were forced to say that. And it's like, no, they were outside because they weren't allowed in, and then they were forced to leave. That's what the whole thing was about, was they were kicked out and shooed away like the little mice they are.
So what happened with Abby Phillip was she was sort of fighting back by saying you can't compare Jennifer Welch to Nick Fuentes.
Oh, you absolutely can.
Well, I can. Watch.
Oh, I absolutely can, because we did the blog about her the other day, or like a couple weeks ago, where she was saying, like, telling Democrats, you guys better get on board with political assassinations of the right, or else we're going to do the same thing to you. She's an extremist, so the fact that
she is a hateful little insect is what she
exactly,
is.
and the fact that
dehumanizing.
And the fact that someone from CNN went on and legitimized this person by going on their show and trying to give them an audience and give them CNN's credibility as a news organization shows just how disgusting and how far left some of their anchors are.
Right. So now which Fox host went on Fuentes' podcast?
Right.
I don't know.
Oh,
exactly.
Oh,
he was on an ex-Fox hosts podcast. I think that's what they're always going off, that Tucker platformed him.
Yeah.
And I think that says more about Tucker at this point. But I think it's interesting because obviously there's a difference between Fuentes being a Hitler lover and Jennifer Welch just being a left-wing hot take queen.
I would say
let me finish the sentence.
Okay,
Bill.
sure.
What Abby Phillip ends up doing is saying, you guys need to police your extremists, when she absolutely refuses to do that for the Jennifer Welches or anyone else.
Exactly.
Right. Because in the eyes of the media, they don't have any extremists. Their side has none.
Right.
I mean, we've studied this.
Right.
They don't believe that there is such thing as a far left. They just don't. And when you do find the rare instance of them acknowledging it, you get instances like Mehdi Hassan, for example, who said, well, the difference between the far right and the far left is the far right wants to kill people and turn America completely white and bring back slavery, and the far left just wants free healthcare. He said that on his show.
Which means, define what a far leftist says. I mean, it is, they make their own side sound incredibly idealistic. You know, and I think this is sort of the problem with the MS Nows in general, is that they're going to always cast all Trump voters, whether they deeply love Trump or just simply want conservative policies, like the whole lot of them are a pile of Nazis. And somehow they consider that fair. Once again, remember, the independent fact checkers don't get involved when you call someone a fascist. It's like, fair game.
They don't. But Jennifer Welsh goes beyond just the fascism claims. As Nick pointed out, she's basically celebrating, or at the very least trying to normalize, this assassination culture, right? Which is particularly insane when you consider that there were two assassinations attempts against Trump. There was a firebombing of the GOP headquarters in where was it, Albuquerque, New Mexico, I think, this past year.
Those never get covered.
There was the shooting of the 2 Jewish embassy workers. That was far left. There was the killing of the United Healthcare CEO. That was far left. There was the murder of Charlie Kirk. That was far left. Need I go on? I mean, this is like the attempted murder of Kavanaugh. Yeah. Like this is just off the top of my head. Right?
I also remember
I'm sorry. Police your side. Yeah. And if this problem is what it is, right? If this is the current state of things, then maybe Jennifer Welsh needs to be quiet about that kind of thing, needs to stop applauding it, needs to stop trying to normalize it. And Abby Phillips certainly should not be going on her podcast until she does, until she cleans that up.
Exactly. And I remember in 2016 doing several blogs of the nightly news not covering attacks against Republicans. There was the firebombing at the, it was our GOP regional office, I think in South Carolina or Georgia or someplace, where there was a firebombing there. There was an attempt to kill like a local level GOP guy at a farmer's market in California. There's all sorts of these stuff that goes back to 2016.
Yeah, how about the one that you blogged on the anniversary of that Charlottesville rally, where NBC went down there to look for Nazis to see if they were there for like some reunion tour or something, and there were no Nazis, but they found Antifa and their crew got assaulted, and then they didn't cover it on the nightly news.
Exactly, they didn't mention that.
They threw their own crew under the bus.
Yeah,
I mean, I think it's the same thing for the pro-lifers, which is when we've had actual attacks on pro-life centers or crisis pregnancy centers, and they were like,
the entire Jane's Revenge saga, yeah.
And then the whole idea of Mark Houck, that they raided his home with guns drawn and scared the junk out of his children, because he shoved a guy outside an abortion clinic who was harassing his son. I mean, and that was a story they just didn't want to do because, well, Biden's FBI is great.
Because they liked it, but they were afraid that the voting public might not.
Well, once again, the most central organizing myth was that Biden's Justice Department wasn't weaponized.
Exactly.
That's the most maddening thing. Like that's a premise so preposterous that if somebody says it, there's basically no point in pushing back almost, right? Unless you've got like an audience who can be swayed, because the person is either completely stupid and has no idea what they're talking about, or they are so disingenuous and talking and arguing in bad faith that there's no point in engaging with them. Like if somebody is going to say that Biden's Justice Department was was not weaponized completely by the book, there's no productive conversation to be had with that person, I think, ever.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's the one thing that really still annoys me. You know, they say, you guys put up with so many things and you just watch these shows and don't throw your remote control. And it's like, no, this is the one that kind of drives me a little nuts. Nick, since we didn't actually blog this stuff on The View, is there a favorite View outburst of Thanksgiving week?
They were not, I wouldn't say they were mild. They were basically doing a lot of the same sort of incendiary stuff about saying things about Trump, the National Guard. And that was one of the things that I was trying to point out after the National Guard thing happened, is that you had The View, an ABC News program, saying this, sort of stoking this hatred against them, saying like they're serving a dictator, they're going to steal elections, which, and like it creates this sort of this negative atmosphere about that, not just them, the media in general, which is why Ken Delaney was able to suggest that this was actually meant for ICE, because all of this stuff, they for months have just been sort of stoking this and sort of saying, using this rhetoric against the National Guard, and particularly doing this whole thing about like, oh, and I believe they said it last week too, it's like, claiming you're just following orders isn't going to protect you when you get dragged.
You know who else said that? The Nazis.
That's literally that was literally what they were saying. Is that you're not going to be protected from the new Nuremberg trials by saying you were following orders.
They are so opposed to the current administration that they have swung all the way to F the troops, F the men and women in uniform.
I think this is the perfect opportunity to close out the NewsBusters podcast by saying we appreciate the National Guard.
Yes, we do. Thank you for your service.
We appreciate ICE. You know, we posted something about how, somehow heroic New Yorkers surrounded a garage so the ICE people couldn't come out of the parking garage for an enforcement action. And that's celebrated now by our news media. And we're just getting, we'll take the controversial position by standing up for law enforcement. It's pretty sad, but that's where our leftist media is right now. So to keep up to date on all this, you got to come to NewsBusters once, twice, 24 times a day. Thanks for listening and watching.